Hey, this is Tom Calvin. Thanks for tuning in to Tomorrow's Legends.
You think you know the story. You've heard it 100 times. But this is not the tale that you know, for this part of the story has yet to be written. Join Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11 as they take the Wave Rider into the near future and check in on some old friends. This is the new adventures of Superman and Lois, as chronicled by Tomorrow's Legends.
Hello, Legendaires. Welcome back to Tomorrow's Legends. We are here in Smallville following the new adventures of Superman and Lois, and this week we are covering Season 1, Episode 4, Haywire. I am the Flash.
I'm Harley Quinn.
And I'm X-Force 11.
Hello, Legends.
All right, guys, let's get right into this. We got a little bit of news, not a ton this week, but we released on our Facebook page the first picture of Eclipso, which is going to be the new villain on Stargirl, one of the new villains on Stargirl. And man, does he look crazy awesome. Like, what a makeup job.
Yeah, scary. I mean, that's a thing of nightmares.
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing.
Yep.
It's going to be cool. Now, he's being played by the actor by the name of Nick Tarabay, which you guys may recognize most recently as Captain Boomerang in the Arrowverse. He was on Arrow and then The Flash, which we were talking off air here. It's kind of funny because he's actually one of the original Flash villains, but he showed up on Arrow first. And what I know him for is from Spartacus, where he played Asher. And he was just a really, really good actor on the Gladiator show Spartacus there. He was kind of the guy. He got injured in one of the arena fights, and so he ended up being the guy setting up all the gambling bets and stuff like that for the owner of the fighting ring and stuff. So he had a really interesting character to play. You never knew if you could trust him, if he was on the good side or the bad side. And he's great. So it'll be fun to have him on Stargirl now.
Cool.
Nice.
That is really it for news, but I want to make a special thanks shout out to our friend Dreamweaver, because she signed up on Patreon to support the show. So we want to say thank you, Dreamweaver.
Mm-hmm. Yay.
And we also want to pass along a continued thank you to Perry White, our friend Kerry Johnson, because he has been continuing to support us for quite a while now. So we want to say thanks, guys. And I have gone in there a little bit and messed around. I still got more work to do, but I'm going to go in there and set up, fix the tiers a little bit. And we're going to work on some new shirts with our new logos and stuff, including X-Force here and, just with the new logos, the new Stargirl logo, whatever. So once we get all that set up, then, we'll let you guys pick something out from that and we'll send it to you for supporting the show.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. Well, we got some pre-show feedback, which was always fun and surprising. This voicemail came in from a fan called Rick Marshall, and once I started listening to it, I realized, this is pre-show feedback. So let's hear what Rick had to say.
Hey guys, this is Rick from Orlando with feedback on actually the first episode of Superman and Lois. I don't think I've ever called into your show before, and I don't call into a lot of shows because I'm usually just so late in watching the episodes. And as I said, I've only really seen the first episode, so I'm going to give you some general feedback on that. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've been a comic book fan for a long time, I mean decades, and I mean literally going back to the 50s. That'll tell you how old I am. I read my first comic book in 1959, and my first Superman comic was Superman 123 from 1958, which is a pretty famous issue, actually. Had a prototype for Supergirl in there, interestingly enough. So I'm a big fan of comic books, as I said, for decades, the 50s, 60s, and 70s mainly. And then the last few decades, I haven't been following comic books as much, but I do watch the superhero movies, and I've seen all the superhero DC TV shows, and I've certainly been watching the Arrowverse shows right from the start. And I do have some feedback on the first episode of Superman and Lois. I have to tell you that I wasn't a fan of Tyler Hoechlin or Bitsy Tulloch in their crossover appearances as Superman and Lois. I didn't like either one of them, frankly. Tyler, I thought, was a good actor, but just stature-wise, he didn't have the physical look of Superman, and that was most noticeable when he stood next to Brandon Routh in the crossover episodes. And even Tom Welling, I mean, the two of them are just, their physical stature-wise, much more like Superman than Tyler is, but he does have the Clark Kent look, I'll give him that. And as far as Bitsy Tulloch, and I'm calling her Bitsy because that's the name that she's been known by for a number of years. I know she's recently gone back to using Elizabeth, but to me she's Bitsy Tulloch. I thought she was really trying to channel Margot Kidder in those crossover appearances as Lois, kind of a goofy version of Lois, and I didn't care for it at all. That's not the Lois Lane I know, the Lois Lane I remember. So I went into the pilot of Superman and Lois not expecting a lot, but I gotta tell you, I was blown away by their appearance in the pilot episode. I thought they were both great. I really loved Tyler's acting. He did a really terrific job as Superman and especially as Clark Kent, wrestling with the same issues of bringing up teenagers and marriage and things that a lot of people have gone through. But the one who really blew me away was Bitsy Tulloch. I thought her Lois was so great. I think in many ways this is the Lois Lane I think I've always wanted and never knew I wanted. She had intelligence, she had maturity, she had gravitas. I mean, you could tell she's a first-rate reporter. You can tell she's a great mother, a great wife, and I just loved the appearance of these two, and it just was so totally different from the expectations that had been set watching their appearances on the Crisis episodes. And Tyler, in particular, when he first appeared on Supergirl, I think it was the first episode of season 2 of Supergirl, I thought he was terrible. I didn't like the way he was presenting Clark and Superman. It was just so goofy and so casual. I know he was trying to emulate some of the humor of Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh, but he just didn't have it. And to see the turnaround they've made in their appearance in the pilot episode, at least, I was blown away. I thought the pilot episode was great. I thought the special effects were great. I agree with everything that you guys said about it. Now, I haven't seen episodes 2 or 3, so maybe the show falls flat on its face in the second 2 episodes. But for the first episode, at least, I was very, very pleasantly surprised. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say because I know you're probably up to episode 4 now by the time you get this. I just wanted to sort of introduce myself and tell you I've been a long-time listener of the show. I think you guys do a great job. And as I said, I have a really strong comics background, particularly the Silver Age and even the Golden Age. I collected comic books for a number of years, going back to the late 30s. I had early Superman in action titles, so I have a lot of knowledge about Superman from, as I said, the 30s up to maybe the 70s. So if you ever get into a situation where you have questions about how the characters evolved during those decades, I'd certainly be glad to help you out with that. But last few decades, I really haven't really read the comic books too much, but I have watched the TV shows. So anyway, I just wanted to say hello and introduce myself, and hopefully I will talk to you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. That's awesome. It's great to have somebody with that wealth and that history of knowledge of Superman that goes all the way back. And so, hey, listen, if we've got questions, we know who to come to. So thanks so much for giving us that thoughts on episode 1.
Yeah, that is amazing, Rick. Like, thank you so much for those high praise words. Like, coming from someone that has that much of a background to trust our breakdown of a TV show is just, I feel honored. So hopefully we don't let you down. I think the bar just got raised for us guys.
I think so too. Yeah. No, I mean, I echo their sentiments. And anytime you want to send us comic book tidbits, we will take them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because we do know the three of us have got various backgrounds and things like that. So we do have some knowledge, but man, not that type of wealth and depth. I mean, for me, I began reading comics in the early 80s. That's when I started because I'm, in my late 40s now. And I got into Marvel in the beginning. I was much more of a Marvel reader, and it was all because of Spider-Man. He's my guy. But, eventually I started keeping up. I watched all the Super Friends cartoons and stuff like that. So I knew everybody. I just didn't spend my money on the DC comics as much. But, yeah, it's just awesome. And I'm glad you're with us. Like, someone with that type of a background finds us. Out of all the superhero podcasts are out there, I feel very honored that you chose to stick with us, and it's really, really cool. Now, you said something about Tyler being not of Superman stature, and I remember saying that a long time ago. on this show and during our crossover episodes too. I thought, man, he is a lot smaller than the other Supermen. It's going to be interesting to see. And I can attest to what you said about Brandon and Tom Welling, because I have met both of them in person, and they are both giant human beings. They don't need muscle suits or anything. I mean, Tom Welling is a big, big man, and so is Brandon Routh. And I'll maybe post the picture on the Facebook page. I've got one of me and Patty Spibbett standing with Brandon Routh between us, and I'm up to his shoulder. It's crazy how big he is.
I would probably come up to like
his belt.
Yeah.
So anyway, awesome, Rick. We're so glad to have you aboard. We can't wait to hear from you again. Yep. Let us get into our impressions of the show.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Harley, you kick us off. What'd you think of episode 4?
I gave episode 4 8.5 reasons he plays defense.
Nice.
I'm going to say it again later, but man, I loved that quote in that scene. It was short, but hilarious. Anyways, this episode definitely was not as fast-paced as last episode, I don't think, but I enjoyed it almost just the same. I mean, I rated it just a little lower for reasons, we can get into. But what I liked was there was a lot of tension throughout this episode, and you could feel it. Like every character had like something different they were kind of struggling with. And then it kind of slowly started to resolve itself by the end of the episode. So I thought they very aptly named it Haywire, because I felt like that's exactly what was happening the entire episode. Like everything just goes completely haywire. But it was nice that we finally got the reveal of what Morgan Edge is up to. So I'm so happy to see all of those pieces just falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because we thought, Haywire, is that a character? Are they bringing Haywire into the show? And no mention of it at all.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to figure out Haywire. And as I was thinking about the episode after I'd watched it, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. The whole episode was literally Haywire.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. Totally. I am also giving it an 8.5. I don't work for you moments. So I'm just going to run this by real quick. It took me about halfway through the episode of the first time and then even the second watch to really get into this one. And it's not because the episode was bad. It's because the flash before it was so awful. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Don't even get me started. But coming around to this episode, yet another well put together episode of Soups and his family and what life is going to be like in Smallville as they all try to figure out things in their new life, each with their own small issues to tackle, like Jordan taking out the offense. But seeing Superman have to make choices between helping the world and then being there for his family, and when one becomes more important than the other, it's such a refreshing angle that we've never seen before for the Big S. And I'm just loving it. I'm loving seeing him have to struggle because we've never seen this angle. He always just goes and is Superman, and then the Clark scenes are completely separate. They've never actually mixed them and show us that the struggle that he goes through. And I love it, that the drama, the tension in each scenario, and the music is so gripping in this show and this episode again. And it's just I'm loving this show so much. We're 4 episodes in. None of us have rated it less than 8. And the rest of the CW's got nothing on the show. This one is now the clear leader, I think, just in storytelling and acting, obviously special effects, but it's the clear leader of the CW now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, they've got a great team behind it. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gave it 8.5 sonic claps. And I like the fact that we had a new villain introduced, and we get to see Edge's motives for taking over Smallville. We have the twists, the turns. This show is really well rounded, and I forgot to put this in the notes, but it was directed by James Bamford. And so you've got this guy who stunt coordinator on Arrow, which was where he started, and he's come up and he's been directing. And you look at this episode, and it had the action, but you think about how much of it was just the dialogue, the back and the forth. And you can see how far he's come in just doing the action to being able to do the whole thing. So I think this episode is just really neat in the way that they dealt with a lot of those different action elements, but as well as the dialogue and the drama between people. So it was really good.
I like that you brought up Bamford because I think he directed the Arrow finale, the entire series finale, and some of the really big important episodes they gave to him. So he has come a long way and knows what he's doing. That's awesome to have him here.
Yep.
All right, let's get into our show points. Harley, start us off.
All right. I wanted to start with Clark for no particular reason, as he just happened to come first in my notes. But the first point that I loved, I like that he finally sort of lays down the law. I feel like he was trying to skirt around this with Sam for a little bit because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is his family. It's not his father-in-law's family. And like, it's just, we're gonna get into these parts with Sam a bit later, but this whole dynamic, it's just so like toxic and it's just been driving me like a little crazy. Not like in a bad way, but just like in a like I hate the situation kind of way. So I love that he definitely very clearly takes a stance in this episode. He kind of lays down the law and he's just not going to let Sam push him around and call the shots. I guess at least not anymore. I mean, he has this whole quip of, oh, it's a new day in the Kent household. I was like, what does that mean? It's their house.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where the lines that he had in this episode come from. I don't work for you, and yeah, that's enough. And this is a courtesy stop, so let's just figure it out together. He kept drilling it in through the entire episode that you are not my boss, and I don't have to do what you say if I feel that there's something more important. And I think that's great, and it shows us that a hero knows when certain things come before everyone else. Yeah. And right now, we're seeing that his family, at certain moments when he deems them more important, he puts them first. And again, it's stuff we have never seen in a Superman story, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, so honorable mention. The scene where Tyler just says, that's why he plays defense, was... It makes me laugh every time. It was easily my favorite one-liner, not only of the episode, but maybe probably of like the series so far, just because the whole scene, the whole picture that is painted is hysterical.
Well, he was so awkward, Jordan, I'm talking about. He was so awkward in that scene, and I think that's good because it shows that he's not going to be super, quote unquote, at everything just because he's developing powers, and I love it. That takes him down a couple notches, and he's just still a kid stumbling through what's going to be puberty and stuff for them right now, and throw powers on top of that. It's great. It shows that he's not going to be the superstar kid, and really, and I think it helps Jonathan too, because Jonathan sees that, hey, actually, I can still be better than him in something.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I really find it interesting to see Superman struggle against villains. But I love the fact that his family's need enabled him to push through and conquer. That scene was just amazing. And we've seen other scenes in this series where he's struggling, but this really called it out where he hears the boys in trouble and it just enables him to push through.
I so love that, Jeff. For years, on your first part there, for years, I've always argued that Superman is too much. He's got everything, every power you could ever need. And as the kids today say, he's way too OP, overpowered. And, in actuality, he does have some weaknesses. We know that he can't fight magic. He's always struggled against magic opponents. And you can get to him through things like supersonics, like we saw on his hearing. Because if you imagine, if he can hear clear around the world to China, and then you send something that is super loud or ear-piercing, imagine how that is on his sensitive ears, right? So it makes sense. It knocks him down a peg by showing that he can be vulnerable in certain key areas, and that it takes a really good villain to exploit that. And then it gives us a great story to follow because he has to figure it out. And he actually does figure it out in this episode, through a couple scenes. He does figure out how to overcome that. I mean, whether we'll get that villain again, we'll talk about him a little bit later. Who knows? But it showed us that he can be vulnerable, and then it showed us that he can figure it out and find a way to fight through it. And I think if they stretch that out, as more villains come and they get tougher and stronger, then it's great. it shows us that Superman isn't all powerful and invulnerable to everything, because then it's, what are you going to do? Who do you throw against him if nobody can get to him?
Yeah.
And that's what I've always complained about. You know, he can be too much, but the show is taking the right course. I think that Superman is vulnerable at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I liked the effect that they did just to make sure that we like got what was happening, like with his ears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's cool. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
not really for him, but I liked the way that it
Yeah.
looked.
Yeah.
I think I have that somewhere down in there. So I'll
Do you? Okay, well,
Well.
I won't say any more on that then. But just kind of going back to like Jeff's last point about him pushing through, like I really love the dichotomy throughout this entire episode for Clark, because he's constantly having to choose. Like, does he choose his family or does he choose his duty? And I thought it was very nicely executed to kind of have him juggling both and doing both, but struggling to do both. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very well done. And, you know, we see in the end, he's able to push through. He's able to be there for John, but he has to, you know, in this particular scene, I'm thinking of like, this is where they're in the locker room and he's trying to like help him. But all of a sudden he's just like, I have to go. Like, we can talk about this later, but right now I have to go. And so that was like him having to like trying to choose his family and then realizing he's like, okay, no, this has gotten to the point where, you know, I've got to go. You're not in clear danger. Like, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he finally is able to like push through, he definitely uses his kids as his strength. And I really loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the way I looked at it, he's kind of measuring the need of each situation, and he's trying to time everything out as best he can. He knows he needs to be in two places at once, but he's measuring, well, if I'll stay here long enough until I'm no longer needed, and then I can move on to the next one, because the next one isn't as important at this moment. And I'm sure we're going to see him make mistakes along the way. I think that's going to be part of the story, where he's going to misjudge something and be too late for something, because that'll add some drama for Superman too.
I mean, you can argue that happened in this episode
Yeah.
because Killgrave actually escaped. If he had been, quote, like escorting the Thing, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. I don't know.
Right.
So
Right.
we'll see. But the last scene this one that was really more like Clark centered. I mean, we're going to talk about all sorts of other stuff, was just the date night scene. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because I thought it was absolutely adorable. Like, I love that he did that, and that he kind of had like the whole barn set up, and like, you know, Jordan's trying to like get Lois to go into the barn, and which was hilarious in and of itself. Like, just stop investigating, just go in there. So funny. And like he gives this whole big speech, and you think they're gonna have some time, and then sure enough, he gets interrupted all over again.
Yep.
So they had this nice parallel throughout the whole episode about relationship issues. Like, I mean, and it showed like this scene, which was kind of their resolution, and then they paralleled the Cushings a lot, and we can get into them a little bit later about like their resolution. But that was another thing that I like to see paralleling throughout this episode, was the two relationships and how they ended up resolving their issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene, I mean, it was nice to show a little bit of romance, that all these years later, they can still have a bit of romance between these two, because it's really cool. I mean, we all remember the scene in the first Superman movie when he first flies Lois up into the clouds, and they're spinning slowly, and I mean, it's one of the most romantic scenes ever, and, you know, so I'm glad that they can kind of bring that along in this show, too. And it's kind of funny, because it's the moment Lois walks into the barn there, Patty Spivot beside me, she's like, I'm really uncomfortable with a barn made out of wood and all those candles around.
And all the hay.
And all the hay.
I didn't
said,
even think of that.
He does have freezing breath, so they might be okay. But
That's true.
Patty Spivot's a good old farm girl, so yeah, that kind of made her. But to go along with what you were saying, Harley, it takes a real understanding person in Lois to always be okay with the constant coming and going that he has to do. Even though she used it as her venting point earlier in the episode, when they had a bit of a spat at the front door there, which we are going to talk about. I know in today's world, relationships are treated as throwaway a lot more often than they should be. And there's a lot of women out there that just would not stand for the guy always ducking out like that. So that's why I say it takes a real understanding person in Lois to be okay with it constantly and know that he's going to come back to her, you know, all the time. So I did appreciate that whole scene too, because of how Lois was. So
yeah, I agree. Exactly. It's a very good point.
I just want to say that I love Superman's suit. I think the more and more I'm seeing it now, I think it's my favorite Superman suit. That scene when he lands in the alleyway and picks up that little disc, which was a distraction. His suit looks amazing. I think this is a really cool modernized version without the red underwear on the outside. I just think it looks good. It's a great suit, and Tyler looks great in it. I mean, they really made him look good. It's
It does look good. I feel like we've mentioned this a few times.
Yeah, well, when it strikes me, I want to, I just like, no, it's good.
It does look good. I agree. All right. Well, we have some more Clark stuff coming with our favorite scenes, so we'll put a pin in some of these other things. But let's move on to Lois. And I've got a couple points that we can dig into for her, like, standalone story. Oh, man. Did I love seeing her stand up to Edge. Loved it. She's like such like a strong woman. Like no one is gonna mess with her, and like she knows her stuff. I loved it so much. But it kind of led me to a question that I wanted to pose. Did they ever publish the article? Pause.
Don't think so, because you see the scene when Lana is, they're setting up chairs and Kyle is reading an article, and it's not her article. It's like a fluff piece.
Yeah, like an interview with the mayor.
Yeah. So it's I don't think they ran it because they were afraid of getting sued. So I don't think it got run.
So the interesting thing to me was her threat to countersue him, because like through him suing her, she would countersue, which would apparently like expose a lot like of his nefarious activities, or maybe not even that, but maybe it would just expose a little bit more than he's comfortable with. Mm-hmm. So do you think they'll be able to run this article, or really any article that she writes, or do we think this is going to be kind of like an ongoing thing where she's going to keep investigating him and maybe uncover some of this stuff, but they can't really publish anything she does?
I think that they're going to have to resolve it some way. She's going to have to be able to publish in order to continue her career. She can't just do the kind of standard stuff. So they've got to come to some type of resolution there. So I think, it's one of those things where I think it's going to play out over the season as she battles with him. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really unclear by the end of the episode. I was like, wait, is she publishing anything? Like, what is happening? But her standing up to Edge was fantastic, and I absolutely loved it. So it's a great scene.
She had such a great game face in that tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it was she went in there with all kinds of attitude, and then she walked out with attitude, and he couldn't stand up with her at all. Like, he couldn't keep up. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they never did go back to the article. They didn't even mention it really after that, so I'm glad you filled it in, X-Force. I couldn't remember what happened to it.
I know, yeah. It felt like it just disappeared into thin air. It's like, wait, what happened? He did a war. Okay, so I think I alluded to this a little bit before, but her standing up to her dad was amazing. Totally calls him out, and she's totally right. Like this was another thing that sort of like grated me about him. Like he made, I think, bad parenting choices because he was never a parent first. Like, I mean, it's totally the difference between his generation and her generation. Like, they always put duty over family because that's how they were raised. I mean, in that generation, women didn't really work. And so that was what you did. That was you went to work, you did your job, you did your duty, and then you came home, and your family was kind of secondary in a lot of ways. And so like, I get where he's coming from, but it's just driving me absolutely bonkers that he's trying to force that mentality on a new generation who doesn't have that mentality. Our generation has partnerships in marriage. It's not the same as that generation. And it bothered me a lot.
Yeah. And then you throw on top of it that all of his military training, he's a lifer in the military. Mm-hmm. And that training puts him in that mindset as well. I mean, they drill that into you, that country comes first. I think it goes God, country, man, or something like that, whatever the order is. So country is ahead of family. And that's how he is, and he cannot shake it. There's no changing him. He's not ever going to change. That's going to be the way he is. Even though they showed a little bit of it in this episode when he called Lois when he was meaning to get to Clark in the romantic candlelight scene there. He's like, "Oh, I just thought I'd let you know that this is happening over in Hawaii. If you really want to help out, I mean." And then he turns around and we'll get to that scene what he does afterwards. But yeah, Lois, it was just great calling him out on that. And then I loved how Clark came in and backed her up too. Like Clark didn't stand down too. That's where someone was. He's like, no, like enough, Sam, enough. This is our family, and we're going to make the decisions. So
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
stuff.
I love that.
I love it.
All right. Well, let's move on to Jordan for a minute. I don't know that we have like tons of substance for him, but let's start with his big play because he did have a huge play in here, which was I think a big deal. And I just absolutely loved all the reactions because I think everybody is as shocked as the rest of us that he's playing and actually playing kind of well.
Well, did you notice that that they made it seem like he was on the sideline for the entire game and he went in for that one last play?
That's what it seemed like.
That's what it seemed like. So because of that, I have this. That was such his Rudy moment. And if you guys have not seen the movie Rudy, this was almost beat for beat the exact same scene in Rudy at the very end of the movie when he gets his big football moment.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Identical. So
Yeah.
That is very cool. I like that they did that. That's awesome.
Yeah. What I enjoyed about Jordan is something I caught in the party scene. He's sitting there talking with Sarah, and half of his face is in shadow, and the other half of her face is in the light. So you had this play of they're having this conversation where he's in shadows, she's in the light, but the conversation that they're having is he's talking about how happy he is and how much he's feeling a place, yet he's in the shadow, and she's trying to kind of ground and do whatever, but she's in the light. And so it was just a neat mix between the two of those things, and just the way that they shot that and how it kind of contrasted what they're going. But it really contrasted with the events about Tag, because we end up finding out, it's because of the fight scene and the heat vision that something came out and affected Tag, and just seeing him be affected by that and knowing that he was partially the cause. I really like that we're seeing the kind of the back and forth and with his character, and that he is not just all one way, but he's got the depth there.
See, I didn't notice that about the lighting, and I'm telling you, X-Force Dreamweaver would be so proud of you right now that you picked up on that, being the film student that she is. I didn't notice that. That makes that scene really bear some interesting, moments. What are they trying to tell us? Because we know these shows do play with lighting and things like that to kind of give away little hints and clues. So what does that mean if he's half shadow, half light? Is that showing us his struggle? Which way is he going to go? And that's interesting.
Yep.
That is interesting. I definitely think it represents a struggle, because what also played into this was the scene we get a little bit later with both of the brothers, where John really admits that he's really jealous, but he can see how it's affecting Jordan. Like, Jordan's really internalized it. Like you said, he's having a really hard time. And I think he's kind of going back and forth, like, mentally between like a dark place and a light place, a happy place. And so that's really interesting that they did that with the light. I wonder if that might have to do a little bit with his mental state, perhaps. That would be kind of cool. I mean, he is struggling hard with what happened to Tag, and knowing that ultimately, like, he technically is kind of responsible for it.
We think. I think we talk about that a little bit later, but
we'll get into that more in the next section. We're going to talk about like Jonathan and Tag a little bit more, since their storylines were pretty interconnected. But let's finish out our points on Jordan real quick.
Yeah, well, that scene you mentioned with Jonathan coming to talk to him and stuff, I just think Jonathan, again, is showing that he's a lot more mature than most 14-year-olds, because he does get jealous, and he's having his own struggle with it, but he still comes to support Jordan anyway. We have that scene in the bedroom with them again, and they're talking it out and stuff. So I love that he's able to have his emotions and his feelings, and both of them are, and yet they can still come back together and be brothers and have each other's backs. I love it. It's fantastic what they're doing with these two guys.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, talking about Jordan, though, that scene in the woods, he actually got hurt when Tag burst out. When he was holding his arm and trying to help him, he got basically shoved away by some type of burst of energy. Jordan was hurt. So that tells us that he actually isn't invulnerable. Because, I mean, that wasn't a big burst. It wasn't a big explosion or anything. It was just a force of energy, and that really hurt him. So he's not as invulnerable as we might think.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that. I think he's more, I guess, enhanced. You know what I mean? Like, he has strength greater than he should for his size, but not so much greater that a lot of people are turning heads. People that know him are suspicious, but people in Smallville just think it's like the best thing, and just think, he's got some ingenious way of hitting people that just sends them flying. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, like it's kind of good. Exactly. Yeah. Like a good technique. So I think it's good to kind of show that he's not really Superman or like Superman. Not yet. I mean, maybe he'll evolve into that, but right now I'd consider him just a little bit more enhanced as opposed to like meta or super, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if, again, it has to do with his brother, because when those pipes fell down on them in the barn, that's a stressful moment. He's saving his brother, so maybe he toughens up. Maybe his skin gets tougher. Maybe the invulnerability grows if they're in a certain situation. And in that moment, he didn't feel like he was in danger. He was trying to help. He was being compassionate and showing empathy. And maybe his powers were not, revved up because of that. And that's why he gets hurt.
Could be.
Yeah, that's a good explanation too. We'll have to see.
Speculation.
All right, let's move on to Jonathan and Tag here for a little bit. All right. Poor John. I'm really feeling for this kid, because he is also struggling. I mean, really struggling with Jordan's newfound popularity. And I liked Sarah's comment. I think she's totally right. I mean, it's not easy for popular kids to be outsiders because they don't know how to handle it. They've never handled it. They're used to being the center of attention, and for many, that's what they like. I mean, usually kids who are, quote, outsiders are that way for a reason. We're a little bit more introverted. I totally just outed myself there, but you can see who I identify with a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it's got me asking these questions. Will this struggle with Jordan's newfound popularity, will that lead to Jonathan's powers having an outburst? Will the jealousy get to him? Because we know, a la Star Wars, jealousy could turn him to the dark side. Jealousy is a horrible, horrible emotion, right? And it makes you do and think things that you are unlike you. So could this jealousy have an outburst of power eventually? And will he continue to support Jordan? Because what if Jordan then, if we're guessing that he might get manipulated to the bad side, could Jonathan actually help him? What if he can't help him because he's envious, he's jealous, and he can't be there for his brother, or maybe his powers never develop and he can't stop his brother from going the wrong way? I just got all these questions. People are saying Jonathan's not getting much of a story. They're all focused on Jordan, but I think Jonathan's story is a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's coming. I think there's more to it, and I think that will come later in the season for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a slow burn, and maybe even a closeout to the season, and then we kind of deal with stuff next season to kick things off. But who knows?
Yeah, that's interesting. Spend this season on Jordan and next season on Jonathan. That's a possibility.
I wonder if we can find out how long these two kids have been contracted for.
I don't know. We'll have to do some internet sleuthing, or maybe our listeners can. One of the two. All right, so I'm gonna move on to tag for a minute here because I was trying to sort out throughout the whole episode because they kind of don't make it clear at first, and that was definitely intentional because they're waiting for the reveal at the end with Morgan Edge. But it was bothering me. Like, I was like, how did this kid get abilities? Like, I wasn't really putting two and two together with the fact that he broke his arm, which means he was the kid at the bonfire that like went flying or whatever. And so once that got hammered back in my head, I was like, okay, so it had to do with the bonfire. But I wasn't ready to go down this path that they were clearly trying to lead us down with. Jordan's heat vision is what caused the powers. I was like, that's ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't at all.
At all. I was like, I mean, yes, technically he is to blame. His powers caused the explosion, which caused the stuff to release, which is what infected, for lack of a better way for me to put this, tag, which makes me wonder, there was more than one kid there. So are others gonna start developing these abilities as a result? So I don't know. Anyways.
Well, just to add on to everything you're saying, he was vibrating like the Flash. So I'm wondering, is that super speed that he's developing?
Well, we saw him healing like his arm, and when he cut his hand too. So that's that speed healing is like Flash as well. So who knows if we've got another speedster on our hands?
Because he was darting around the woods there. Once the powers really started becoming uncontrollable, he was zipping around the woods while Jonathan was trying to make sure Jordan was okay. But like you were asking, Harley, what's causing it? Because we hear from Sam say that it's the mix of Jordan's eye blast with that yellow gas that may have awakened his metahuman development. But what does that mean? Is that like why is he a metahuman? And is this like X-Men mutants? When they reach a certain age, boom, their powers awaken and they come. Like, we don't know where this is going with metahuman abilities, and how does Sam know about that? Like, as the military, is he studying other metahumans? Because we're in the Arrowverse, and we know there's metahumans all over. So maybe the military is studying how Flash's villains got human abilities and all the other different shows. We have no idea, so we have to see where that develops. But where does Tag get metahuman abilities from? Does he live close to the X-Kryptonite, which we'll get into in a little bit? Like, could he be nearby enough to get some type of a residual effect that it's awakening these abilities in him? We don't know. Is there a meteor connection somehow, a la Smallville? Like the meteors. Is there something going on there? I don't know. We're going to talk about these more points and more in depth in a little bit. But what I found interesting too was Clark flies him to a thin part of the atmosphere, and he says, "This will help calm you down." And I thought, well, that's interesting. How does Clark know that? To fly him to the thin air, it's going to slow his ability. Like, okay, cool, but how? Well,
it basically knocks him out. It takes out his oxygen levels, so he has to calm down. But, the interesting thing, you talked about the powers and the abilities. I mean, they talk about that he's going to a special school, and I'm thinking, okay, that's Xavier's. But here's another callback to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Marvel Universe is the Terrigen Mists.
Yes.
That they're people that have innate abilities, but they pass through this mist and inhale this mist. And for people that have that, they gain powers and abilities. And so it could be, once again, DC's equivalent of he had these things somehow inherently, whether it was from the X-Kryptonite, something else, and that blast of heat and that, mist there, that dust just brought it to the forefront. We just don't know yet. There's lots of questions.
Lots of questions, but here's where I'm kind of going with it. I did have like quick thoughts and theories from all of us talking about this. But to me, because he said it was like a yellow gas, it felt to me like that Jordan's heat vision penetrated some of the X-Kryptonite, and that's what got into the air. And yeah, all of like the way he was like starting to transform, it felt very much like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's the first thing I thought of too. But it made me think, do they all, because we see Lar, and her powers are very similar to Superman's powers. So do they all develop the same powers as Superman, or do they, like you guys are suggesting, are they developing completely different powers that might be more innate to them? That's what I'm like really curious about.
Yeah. Good
Well,
question.
if it's coming from ex-kryptonite, then I would imagine they will all be Superman-like, because his powers are very specific to being from Krypton and what the yellow sun does to him here. So if kryptonite is what gives them their initial powers, then it should be Superman-based.
Yeah.
If it's meteor kind, a la Smallville, then it could be a whole slew of different things. So.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm interested to see where they go with it.
Or what does Black Lightning do? They have that green stuff that if people get injected with it, they get superpowers. So, I mean, there's so many angles here. And look at the Flash with the particle
accelerator.
explosion. Yeah, like, who knows what Superman and Lois is going to do? Their take on it's going to be obviously a little bit different for the show, but so far it's intriguing. Listen to the questions we have. So.
Kind of getting back to Jonathan, I really love his character. He's a quarterback on the field and off the field. He really cares about his team. He wants to protect them. He wants what's best for them. He's, family or teammates, he cares and wants you to succeed. You see him caring for brother. You see him caring for Tag and trying to make the peace between the different players. And I just love that character of that's who he is, and just seeing that, that's pulled from both of his parents, but just seeing that character in him. And once again, this is a 14-year-old guy. So it's just amazing to think about.
He is that mature, and it's crazy, and it's cool to see. He is a good kid at heart. I think he's a really good kid. And despite being the popular jock from the city, which, like usually those guys kind of tend to be pretty cocky and don't have the emotions, don't have the sensitivities to care like you're saying he does, and yet he does. So that he's just a good kid. And I think because of that, if we see him be the one that possibly goes down the dark path, that is going to be a real hard hit because of what they're developing in him right now. That's going to be huge. So now I want to bring this up. Did you guys notice that this episode had a couple of very intense, stressful situations that he was part of, both in the woods with his brother and at the house party with Tag, and a couple moments like that? He was involved in them, right in the forefront of it, and not a hint of powers came to life.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, but what is that telling us? Could he possibly not have any powers at all? Because these situations are just as stressful as what Jordan went through.
Well, here's a thought on that. He is used to dealing with on the field changing situations that are threatening to his life. He's got people coming at him as quarterback. He's been drilled in that. So he is kind of used to not knowing what to come next, but having a plan for it. Whereas his brother doesn't have that type of experience until now. He's just starting to get to it. So it's going to maybe take something above and beyond, and maybe his is not going to be necessarily stress induced, but maybe it's something like he's gets really emotional, or something's happening to his family where it's not necessarily stress, but it's some type of other factor that causes it to kick up.
That's a good point. Yeah, he's maybe used to the pressure a little bit more. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. See, it's been a while since we've had a show just present these ideas and having us trying to, figure them out and be completely intrigued by it, and I love it. That's part of what the show is so good, because we're just like, but what if this and how's that, and we're interested. We're not going, plot device and really, like, that was so cheap. We're just completely intrigued by it, so it's great.
Yeah, it's nice to have a fresh season and a fresh take for sure. All right, well, let's touch on the Cushings for a few minutes here. I mean, the evolution of their relationship over the course of this episode was really interesting to me. It's not where I thought it was going to go.
Oh.
So, like, we got a very clear glimpse of where their relationship is when they're trying to set up all the chairs and he's reading the article about Edge, and Lana gets borderline defensive because she's like, did you even notice like how creepy he was being and how uncomfortable that was? Like, it was cringy. And you see her a few times like make eye contact with Kyle like at that dinner and be like, hey, like, are you seeing this? And he's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is great, you guys are totally bonding. And she's just
I
like,
know, he's just oblivious.
I know. And she's like, this guy is creepy. So I was quite surprised when they actually sort of kind of took a step back in time by the end of it. I think that scene with the pancakes, we got a pretty clear glimpse of what their relationship used to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised too that it got to that point because I predicted them breaking apart. So I was really surprised that there's a bit of a spark still there. And I think it's that night out with Lois that gave Lana maybe renewed sight on Kyle and being able to appreciate him a little bit more, because Lois totally points it out. I mean, your husband's like Superman. He's a hero. He puts helping his fellow neighbors and stuff ahead of everything else. He's a good guy. And I think Lana's like, I do have a good guy.
Yeah, I like that because that night gave them the chance to blow off steam. It gave them the chance to share with somebody they don't have the expectations because of Lois just being new into town and not falling into the town social structure, so they can come together as equals. And they were really venting, clearing things up, helping each other see perspective, and both of them came away from it with like a greater understanding of maybe what their spouses are going through and appreciating them a bit more. So I really appreciated that they've got that, and I'm looking forward to maybe getting some time of them spending time together and throughout the series where it's not just about the guys, but where they can bounce things off of each other and be there for each other as friends. So I'm hopeful in that.
Yeah, I like how you said that. And it's neat because like you were saying, the two of them coming together they're not going to be bothered by whatever rumors are around the town or reputation there is, because neither of them know each other about that. They're both fresh to each other in a new friendship. So all of that stuff didn't get to interfere with them getting to sit down and have a chat with each other. And obviously, like you said, blow off some steam, have a few drinks. And it did make me think similar to the scenes with Barry and Oliver when they're sitting at the bar together and just having a talk. I was like, this is it's such a nice moment. Those are some of my favorite scenes with those two guys. Mm-hmm. And time with the two ladies here and see that they can have a friendship and talk about stuff. It was cool.
Yep. I enjoy the friendship too. I want to see more of it.
Yeah.
Well, let's start to dig into our villains, because that's all we have left. Yes, I am categorizing Sam Lane as a villain. We're going to talk about him. So. Yes, we're going to talk about him first. He made me so angry this episode. I just thought he was being like the biggest jerk. And right now, like, I don't like his character. Not like in a bad way, just like in a he's made me very angry kind of way. It's great writing and great acting because I'm incredibly passionate about my dislike for this character.
There you go. You love to hate, right?
Yes, he is the one that I love to hate right now. I mean, why do they have to tell him everything about Jordan? It's their family. Like, they don't have to tell him literally everything in their lives. Just because Clark is Superman doesn't mean that Sam Lane is like his commanding officer, because he's not. He does this as a courtesy, but he's like, well, I'm the one that keeps the military in check. And so I feel like that makes him think he has some sort of sway over them. And it just irks me that he's in the middle of everything and he is treating grown, I'm going to leave out the expletive, people like they are 14 years old and playing house. It's driving me bonkers.
You said it. It's because he is a military commander that he just expects everyone to tell him everything about anything. That's why he has no tact when it comes to family matters. No tact at all. He's military, and they deserve to know everything because they know better than everybody else in the world.
Well, he just does not have that balance. Like we've dealt with it. That from episode 1, we saw the contrast between the two sets of parents, and he just has no family life. He has had a military career, and I know plenty of folks in the military who have a good balance because they were raised well. They've got that balance. They appreciate it. They're walking that line. They understand things, but he just doesn't have it. And he's just, his job is it to him. And it just shows.
Yeah, he was super out of line telling the boys not to bother their father. I was like, did he just said what? He can't say that.
That scene made me so uncomfortable because he's trying to push his ideals onto the boys, and it actually stuck this episode with them because we see them arguing over it in the woods during that intense moment with Tag. You know, Jonathan's saying, "Go, just call Dad," and Jordan's like, "No, Dad's busy. He's saving the world. We can't bother him." Obviously, Grandpa's words got into them, and they're feeling guilty about needing their dad, and that's just wrong. Wrong. He way stepped out of line there. It's not his place at all to instill those type of values in his grandkids. It's not his place. Yeah. I really think that he cannot see Superman as anything other than a tool. I think he would be happier if Superman had no personal life. He was doing nothing but serving the U.S. military. He can't separate the two, and so nobody wins with him. So, yeah, well said. He can't separate Superman from being a human and a father. All he sees is a defensive weapon.
Yep. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that leads to him taking Captain Luthor's bait and creating program 7734, just like on Luthor's world. Yeah. So
Emergency protocol. Yeah. Wait, and what is that? Did Luthor explain it enough that we have a good idea what that's going to be? It's just a what if Superman goes bad kind of thing, right?
And what it looked like on Luthor's world may be totally different than what it looks like on this world. So who knows?
Yeah, it wasn't clear, but this made me like sad and angry. Like sad because I was like, maybe could there possibly be hope for him turning a corner and becoming like a better man after, you know, Lois kind of takes him down a peg, after Clark takes him down a peg. And I don't know that there is, and that kind of like makes me angry. I'm like, why are you letting this person that you don't know like get to you? Like, you know Clark, you know your daughter, and you know Clark as Superman. So I don't really understand. I just don't understand how this is like getting into his head. So I was just like, dude, you're better than this.
I think because Luthor shows up in a spaceship with super high tech stuff, and the military in him sees that like, holy, this is what this guy has had to develop to fight Superman. Then I need to up my game just in case. I think that all he's able to connect with that, the military might of what Luthor showed and the technology and stuff, and that's what's getting to him. And I think he sees that he might need something like that to defend against Clark for whatever reason. But I want to ask why. Like, why? If you look at this episode after watching it twice, Clark has given absolutely no reason for him to even think that he's turning bad. He's choosing his family first, which is a good thing. It's not a villainous thing. It's a good thing to be wanting to protect his family and make sure they're okay first. Where is the concern that Superman's going bad?
Yeah.
He's not falling in line like a good defensive weapon because he's a person.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's not doing the yes, sir.
Exactly.
Let's move on to Morgan Edge here. I got a couple points I wanted to bring up first here. I found this funny. The show opens up in Saskatchewan 6 years ago. Saskatchewan? Like, who out there out of our American listeners and people around the world even knows where that is? Because it's a Canadian province. We have provinces up here like the United States have states. It's Canada's prairie province. It's our farm country. And nothing ever exciting happens there. So where did they pull Saskatchewan out of the fold from? It made me laugh.
It's the middle of nowhere. That's what they needed.
Yeah.
Apparently there was a meteor shower there. I need to drive over. It's about a 5-hour drive to get there. I should go check it out.
You'll probably
Come
be
back.
disappointed when you get there.
Yeah. But what if I come back with real flash powers? That'd be cool.
You'd be better off driving down to Vancouver.
Yeah. So, and let's lead into that. We see Edge. He's in a military cavalcade during the meteor storm. Now, right off the bat, I immediately thought, for Smallville fans, this sure looks like Smallville's beginnings, the meteor shower. And then second, Edge knew what he was tracking. He had a tablet in his hand, and he told the truck drivers when to stop. Yep. He was following something, and when they stop and he gets out, he finds a spaceship in the meteor debris. What does that mean? What are we supposed... What's that?
I said, is that what that was? I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it was a ship. It had a frame and red windows. So, so I want to know, first of all, what does that mean? The fact that he knows what's coming and he's tracking it, and he finds it. Go ahead, Jeff, if you got a point.
No, I'm wondering the same thing, because that means that he is aware that this stuff is falling to Earth. So he's got connections with satellites and that kind of stuff, but there's also been precedent to know what to look for and what to track. Yeah. So how long has this been happening? What's going on? It just raises a ton of questions.
Like, how does he know about all of that stuff? How does he track the one meteor that actually is a little spaceship? And I mean, my question is could that be Lar in that spaceship? Could he have gotten her as a small child, or however old she might be? Could that have been her? And that's why she's at his side, like a daughter, basically, because it seems like she will not waver from being at his side. Maybe she's grown up with him. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And then he says, this is at the point where he says the resurrection begins. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean bringing dead people back to life? Does that mean bringing old Superman villains back to life? Because resurrection means bringing something back. So what resurrection? He's chasing meteors. He tracks a spaceship, and now the resurrection begins.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really unclear. Like, because we'll jump a little forward, but like they find X-Kryptonite under Smallville, and Edge talks about resurrecting in the army, and then he talks about filing willing candidates. Lar does about willing, and he talks about how it has ways. So, like, when I think resurrection, I think somebody's dead. So how can you not be willing if you? But I mean, so what do they mean by what is his definition of resurrection? So,
yeah, that's really unclear, because if it's dead people they want to bring back, or is it waking dormant powers in people that he's been tracking? Maybe he knows all these people that have powers, and he's going to resurrect. He's going to bring that out of them. I don't know why he uses the word resurrect, but
that's
willing
where
candidates means experimenting that could lead to death.
Yeah.
Because if you're a willing candidate, it means you're willing to risk something that you could not survive from. So again, it just all comes down to, well, why does he need an army? What is he planning?
Yeah.
Exactly. See, I told you he had to be interested in Smallville for nefarious reasons. It's all connected. His overpowered hench people, his weird interest in remote mining towns, and the reason people around him are disappearing. I think they're his candidates. I'm going with Martin here. I think he's, quote, resurrecting dormant abilities, or maybe there's certain people that have like a smidge of alien DNA in them somehow, that it's gonna, like you said, like the Terrigenesis mist, if you're a candidate, and it either won't affect you at all, or it'll turn you into a superpowered person. So I'm wondering if they're kind of going that route with it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, how does he know that there's X-Kryptonite there in these mining towns? How does he know there's X-Kryptonite? I mean, they show us 6 years earlier he tracks the meteors. Okay, fine. But how does he know that there's X-Kryptonite buried on the outskirts of Smallville? Did Smallville have a meteor shower? Or is it like, because Kryptonite is not from Earth, right? So it had to have gotten there somewhere. But he knew. What's that? He knew exactly where to look, right?
Yeah.
Sorta. I think he's town hopping, going through all these mines. I think he's purposely picking small mining towns because remember, he went to New Carthage and started all of this stuff, and then he suddenly pulls out and didn't like get as many jobs in, and like the whole like culture kind of fell through, and like everything about what was going on there just sort of fell apart. And so that's
a good
where
point.
I think it's connected. I think he's been town hopping looking for it. And then when he's finally come to Smallville, whether he had some other intel to know to come to Smallville, because you're right, he did seem to know more or less where he was looking, and he had the tablet again. So
and he tells her point right. He's like right here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boom, and she punches the hole in the wall.
So, yeah, it's interesting because I think that tells you that it's been a while since this ex-kryptonite hit the Earth because of how far underneath it is. So he's not able to go in and detect it from the surface. What he's doing is he's playing the odds. It seems like he's saying, well, there's mines here. This seems like a good spot. I'm going to go, bet that this, that there might be some here. And then he pulls out his tool when he's close enough and he can see it. So, yeah, but obviously he knows that some has hit the Earth in the past. And ex-kryptonite is, as far as the comic book lore, was accidentally created by Supergirl. And it temporarily empowers non-Kryptonians with Kryptonian-like superpowers. But he's got to know that something hit the Earth at a certain time and a certain depth so that he can go look. But he's playing big odds to risk money and buying up all these towns, and then they go bust like New Carthage does. So,
well, let me throw in a different angle. You're saying that he's town hopping, looking for it. What if New Carthage, what if he went in there and just cleaned it up? He depleted all of the ex-kryptonite and now he moves on. Maybe he's going from town to town and
before he was able to like fulfill all the jobs and stuff. Yeah, that's probably what happened. That's a good point.
Yeah, good point.
So, but again, how does he know what ex-kryptonite is? Where does he get this information from? We need some backstory on him because this Superman story is a little bit farther in the future than we're used to. So how does he know what it is? Where is his information, his history coming from? All this? Is it related to Supergirl? Again, like how far are they going to connect to the comic ideas or connect us to the Supergirl show? And you're caught up with Supergirl, Jeff. Did they do an ex-kryptonite story on that show?
They have not brought in ex-kryptonite yet. It's one of the things that they've talked about over on Made of Steel of what type of kryptonite would you like to see, and they talked about the different types, but it hasn't been brought in to my knowledge. I can't remember that it's been brought in on Supergirl, the TV series yet.
So if it hasn't, then because Supergirl's coming to an end, this allows Superman and Lois open writing to be able to do what they want with ex-kryptonite. It might not have anything to do with Supergirl at all. It just landed here in a meteor shower. And like you said, who knows how long ago. But then again, Clark's been here for 20 plus years. So maybe it came with him. And it's got 20 years of dirt on top of it now.
Yeah, who knows?
True.
I don't know. Fascinating, though, because it's just... it makes me want to know more about Lar. Because, you've got the question here, how does Lar get her powers? Well, did she get her powers from... Was she her first experiment? Or was she his first experiment with the ex-kryptonite to give powers, or was she in that little spaceship that I mentioned?
Yeah.
But that flashback scene said 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's only 6 years ago. She's a full-grown woman. So did she arrive fully grown, if that was her?
Yeah.
Because we know Kara did. She didn't arrive as a baby like Clark. She arrived full grown. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, I had one more point while we're on Morgan Edge here before we jump into our baddie of the week. I'm finding it very odd that he has such an interest in Lana, which immediately makes me think that he's like trying to quote resurrect her. bring her like over to his team, and I really like her character as she is, and I don't want to see her turn into like a villain or like be otherwise quote like messed up, if you will.
Yeah.
So I don't understand his interest in her, and I don't like it either.
Yeah. Agreed.
I am enjoying her now. I remember how I said in the first episode, I was like, I don't know about her. She's totally grown on me, especially after this episode. I'm totally okay with her. I don't know what that weirdness was in the premiere. She just came off funny, but man, she's good now. And yeah, Edge was way too obvious with his interest in her. It was creepy. And you know, we talked about Kyle not really seeming to notice, or at least he didn't notice in the way that he should have.
Yeah.
Because you hear them argue about it later. He's like, well, you're mad at me because I didn't come to your defense, but you'd be just as mad at me as if I did step in and say, hey, man, that's my lady. You know, he said something like that. So he was like, he felt like his hands were tied and he couldn't do anything. So, Edge was strange because right when he first sees her on the football field, he just stares at her and walks over to her. And, and poor Kyle is like, hey, that's my wife. Oh, she is? She's one of mine. She works at my bank. Oh, like it's blah.
It was weird and off-putting.
Creepy.
Yes, so creepy. Ugh, didn't like it. All right. Well, we can move into our last couple points here because we have not yet talked about Thaddeus Killgrave. He is our villain of the week, apparently played by Brendan Fletcher, who also played Stanley Dover on Arrow. Jeff, I think you filled this in. So
yeah.
I don't remember that. Stanley
I don't
Dover.
either. Who is this?
So I just kind of did, clicked on his IMDb, and so he was in season 7 and like I'm looking at it, if I can click on it.
Was Stanley not the guy that befriended Oliver in the prison, and we thought he was just
because it looks like he is he was in the some of the prison episodes, it looks like. So
and he turns out to be a psychopath.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't look like him at all with the beard and the hair and everything.
Not at all. It looks very different with the big shaggy hair and the beard, but
Mm-hmm.
And he had great voice change for him here because he had a much higher pitched nerdy kind of voice on Arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when he because he was trying to befriend Oliver to escape with him and be buddy because he was obsessed with him, and then he eventually once Oliver denied the friendship, he went crazy, and he was a really freaky psychotic kind of bad guy. Like he was a serial killer, so freaky. And I had wished that they brought him back again to have Oliver deal with him in an episode or two. That would have been great. But this is cool. They're bringing these guys that played villains already, and they're going to play different villains on this show, which is kind of neat.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I loved this whole showdown with him. I thought it was pretty wicked, where he's kind of got like the sonic gun. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but I really thought he was going to get the upper hand there for a minute. I mean, I'm not sure where they really would have gone with that, but it was nice, I guess, in a way. I guess you don't really want to root for your hero to lose, but it was nice to see Superman kind of gotten the better of, because like you said, he is very super powered. He is almost overpowered. And so it's nice to see an ingenious villain that's able to get the better of him and be like 10 steps ahead, which I felt like he was.
Yeah, I liked Killgrave. They did such a good casting job there. He wasn't, because I looked him up in the comic books, and he was really, really goofy in the comic books and not creepy at all, where this guy was really creepy and he was confident and he had that eerie voice. And I just thought, oh man, this guy's going to be cool. But he didn't last long. He got knocked out. I mean, the sonic clap knocked him out. But he's going to obviously go back to prison. So I don't know if we'll see him again or what. But
I just looking at his comic stuff, that he's a scientific genius, and so he produces technologies to fight Superman. He sells them to other villains like the Joker, and he's a scientist who worked for Energang before it was dismantled by Superman, and we've heard about that. So I think I think he will be back because he's a plotter and a thinker. And so he's going to figure he knew Superman was distracted and that's why he was getting moved, and he's been plotting this. So I think he's not just going to be, he may not be around for a while, but he's going to be back. So
not the freak of the week.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, kind of like yes and no, but like I was saying, we have very layered villains through the series. I mean, you have like the grayish villain in Sam Lane. You have the clear, at least season-long villain in Morgan Edge, potentially series-long villain. I mean, we'll just have to see how that goes. And then, you know, you have, that's true. You also have Lex Luthor, which could be either season-long or series-long. And then you have, you know, a couple people that he just needs to contest with as the quote, like villain of the week. I mean, we had it last episode with that assassin, you know, that attacked Lois. And so I'm liking how it's very layered and how we get multiple villains, because I think that this format always works a little bit better.
Yeah, they have to have ones that they can deal with within an episode and not have it continually going on and on and on. There has to be the short and long playbooks here with it, so it's cool. And I had a question though, like that sonic blast, I wonder how that affects the normal people that were around, because there was a lot of innocent bystanders watching the fight and Superman knocked them all out. So what is that going to be like on their ears and their heads?
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. I wonder if it was set at like a certain frequency that he would be more susceptible to, because I don't think he was wearing earplugs and it didn't seem to be bothering him.
Yeah, I mean it's focused, so that the gun seemed focused, so
it was a gun.
Sorry, you've got me confused. That the sonic blaster. Yes, I'm talking about when Superman did the sonic clap. He knocked everybody out that was watching the fight. So I'm wondering how, like, I'm guessing it's just a concussion blast and they're just knocked out or whatever. Because he says, you know, there's some people here you need to send medical team to check on them, kind of thing. So I mean, going back to the sonic blaster, when you saw what it was doing to Superman, you could see, like you mentioned earlier, Harley, his ears and the inside of his head were burning up. And I was wondering, okay, is that just heat? Are they heating up from the pain? Is that just a visual for us to see what's happening to him, or
is it friction? Like
friction,
like the sonic vibration is just vibrating his bone in his head, so that it's heating up. So breaks.
And would it eventually melt if he fired it on him for a continuous time? Would it eventually melt him on the inside? Like, I mean, that's probably why they showed us that red. It was like becoming molten in his head.
Interesting.
Crazy. But yeah, you mentioned Intergang, because we heard Sam say Intergang a couple times already too.
Yeah, he has.
So that's, you know, one of normal powered folks for the most part, but it's going to be interesting to see if more of them come up. And you know, Hellbing, one of the creators, has said, you know, they don't want to do the Freak of the Week like Smallville. They don't want to necessarily do the arcs, the graphic novel arcs like Flash is doing. They want to do their own thing. So, you know, they're tying it back to the family, and so we'll see how their format works.
I think so far so good. Like Harley was saying, I think they're developing layers, the short game and the long game, and everything that happens in between.
Yeah, it's working well. For whatever they're doing is working for me right now. So
totally. Well, that takes us into our favorite scenes, which I'm excited about. Let's do those.
Shape out an eagle!
All right. It looks like you're up first this time, Harley.
I am. So I chose Killgrave's monologue.
Just like you, villainous Harley.
Exactly. I can talk about the details in a minute, but like when you have an opening like that, you know I'm going to pick it. So.
Of course. Here it is just for you, villainous.
I need your sit rep on Killgrave. Go.
Confirmed, General. Prisoner is in transit.
Einstein saw time as an illusion. One that gets us to wear a watch. Do you happen to have the time? Nice piece. And analog. Good for you. A lot of people go digital. They need to be spoon-fed. Sad. Society is spoiled rotten. I think they need a wake-up call. See, the thing is, that's not chewing gum. It's a temperature-sensitive synthetic polymer resin I made in the sink of my prison cell. Highly mercurial at an atomic level. Combined with the precise vibration of a ticking wristwatch. Well, 3, 2, 1.
Good and creepy. That's how you like them.
I love a good bad guy monologue. And I enjoyed him like as the baddie of the week because he was so smart. I mean, we kind of talked about this, but he's definitely super smart. He seemed to be several steps ahead for sure. I mean, you could tell just by what he lays out in that monologue and then, you know, what he ends up telling Superman in their confrontation. So it's kind of a shame they caught him. But maybe he'll escape again and we can see some more of him versus Superman. He was a worthy foe to only use once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like that he wasn't, when you get the Freak of the Week type of villain, they're usually often, there's some type of cheese factor to them where they're just like, oh, come on, this guy's not going to stand up to our hero. And this guy was not that at all. He looked formidable. Superman does outwit him sort of in the end. You know, he had a tactic up his sleeve that maybe Killgrave forgot about or didn't know about. You know, he could send his own sonic attack right back at him. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. He just wasn't your typical Freak of the Week. He was well done.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
All right, X-Force, yours is next.
So mine was the Clark and Lois confrontation in the hallway. So let's take a listen.
All right.
Babe, I am so sorry I missed the vote.
I know. It's okay.
No, it's not. And you're covering.
Don't super spy on my post rate or whatever you do.
You clench your jaw when you're mad.
I'm not mad.
Well, you should be. I said I was going to be there and I wasn't.
Clark, can we not do this right now? I am not in the mood.
I just want to apologize, and I want you to know that
Babe, I don't need an excuse. I know you have an excuse. You're Superman.
Lois.
Okay, fine, I'm mad. And I know it's irrational because I understand that there were lives at stake, but this was so important to me. And we lost the vote, by the way, and now I'm feeling guilty for wanting you to do something you said you would do. When we started dating, I knew what I was getting into, and I don't get mad about you missing date nights or anniversaries or family dinners because of some idiot with a nuke. But lately, with everything that's going on with the boys and my dad constantly in your ear, it feels like I'm really far down on your list of priorities.
Is that honestly how you feel?
Right now, in this moment that I might regret tomorrow, yeah, I do. That's my lift. Lana asked me out for a drink and I need one.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, I just really appreciate that it shows that Clark can't do it all, even though he's Superman. Lois knows, but that's not easy for her either. And they both have to manage and adjust their expectations. I just think it shows the richness and the depth of their relationship and the character of Superman, of him wanting to be there for her in the ways that he needs to. And I just, once again, it's about the relationships, and I really love it.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a real argument too. Like it wasn't even much of an argument. It's just that it just felt so real. That felt like extreme, true to life relationship drama that you got to deal with. I feel like I've been in that exact scenario on both sides at different times.
Yeah. No, that was a great scene. It showed the depth of their relationship, and it's true to everyday life because I have definitely felt exactly like Lois in this instance. I mean, it's like, I know why you weren't there, and I understand, but I'm still going to be really mad about it, and I just need some time. So, totally got it.
Yeah.
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 Good
And
stuff.
it was nice to have that and then the bookend scene of the barn.
Yes.
The two of those without each other, they would have been okay, but the two of those two working together and building the depth in this scene and seeing it pay off later was just so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Totally was. All right, I'm going to end this one with my favorite scene, the one with Clark and Lois when they stood up to Sam in their living room there. And we talked about it in the episode. I'll play it, and then we'll say a little bit more about that. But here it is.
Look, I may have misspoke.
Misspoke? You cannot tell the boys not to come to me for help.
My point was to help them see the life and death stakes of your job.
My job is I'm their dad. That's my job.
You're not just their dad. You're the most important person in the world. And now that they know that, they need to respect the obligation that comes with it.
I have to respect that obligation. Me. And believe me, I live with it every day.
Then act like it.
Stop! Stop it! This is the same toxic, honor above all else crap you used to pull on me when I was a kid.
Lois, please, this isn't about us.
No, it's about you and your parenting choices and how they sucked then and they still suck. And we're not going to be applying them to our boys.
I made a choice to dedicate my life to the armed service.
You could have done both. That's what Clark is doing, and I see him struggle with it every day. So how dare you tell him he can't be the father he is because you never bothered to give it a go. You keep pushing us, you won't be welcome here anymore.
Fine. I'll get my things. I have a long drive ahead of me.
Oh,
Yes.
man.
So good.
That was the most dramatic scene for me in this episode. Just seeing them take a stand and put their family first and then defend each other to Sam, who is relentless on thinking Superman's duties are to the world first. I love that Clark was standing up to him and arguing. And I love that Lois steps in and says, enough. And it just, the acting, the performances, this was Emmy worthy. This one scene was Emmy nomination worthy for all three of these guys. Especially Clark and Lois. Man, just really. Yeah, like I found myself holding my breath because I didn't want to make a peep in case I get in trouble too.
Yeah, it was a great scene. I mean, I think I talked about it before, but just seeing Lois stand up to him and be like, no, you suck as a dad, and we are not doing that. I was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I love the fact that Clark takes it back to him that it's his responsibility to decide, even if the boys both are, have no powers, it's still up to him to decide because he's the dad. It's his responsibility. He's a superhero. He has to make those judgment calls. And I love it. I love it. Love it.
It's his life.
Love it. All right, guys, it's that time of the show to remind you about our Patreon page. And just like Dreamweaver and Perry White have been doing, you can support the show, which tells us how much you appreciate all the work we put in. And this is how you do it.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
And as if we haven't heard enough of our fine announcer there, Mr. Dan Cavalry, my best buddy in the world, he did something special for us. I think he's really getting into this feedback jingle thing of his. We've got a special one tonight, and let's just say, I'll talk more about it. Let's just say we get his full entertainer voice this time.
Teardrops rolling down our faces, sitting here longing for the sound of your text. Feedback, it's time for feedback. Whoa, whoa, please feedback and show us some love.
I think he's getting into it.
Yeah.
A little bit. Great though.
So I haven't shared the story to him, but he actually is kind of a Broadway entertainer. He has been on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people singing and playing the grand piano and performing. So that's what we're getting. Like we're getting that kind of crazy talent for fun on our show, and we can't say thanks enough. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
All right, let's kick off our feedback with a voicemail from Mr. Perry White. See what he has to say.
Hey, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. It's your friend here, Perry White, who's been meeting deadlines since 1973. Here to offer some feedback for Haywire. Let me go ahead and get it out of the way first. I'm going to give this episode 8 near Pulitzer Prizes out of 10. I really dug it. There were a number of great things I liked about it. Some callbacks to Smallville, kind of sort of both good and bad, so let's go. Let me just go ahead and say, like, the first thing I really loved about this episode is, I mean, they just sort of dropped this nugget into the episode, basically saying that there is this school of folks who have superpowers. We must see this school. I guess it could be like the DC version of Charles Xavier's School for the Gifted, right? You don't just drop that into an episode unless you plan on showing us what this school is all about. I have to imagine they have a damn good football and basketball team if it's full of superpower folks. So yeah, that was really cool, and I have to see that. The other thing that I saw about this episode and sort of the feelings that it gave me, there were some definitive Smallville vibes that I got from it. I mean, the kid who was exposed to, I guess, what we later learned to be ex-kryptonite, started having those, I guess, tremor powers with his hand or what have you. There have been a couple of episodes from Smallville where characters who were exposed to just regular green kryptonite, they eventually sort of became what was fondly known as Freaks of the Week, right? But there were at least 2 characters I remember from Smallville who had exposure to regular green kryptonite, and I don't know, I wouldn't say that they necessarily gained powers, but they were significantly affected by it, and both of them developed what turned out to be fatal tremor-like episode. So it was sort of interesting to see Superman and Lois's take on, I guess, those same sort of similar tremors from exposure to what we learned to be ex-kryptonite. And speaking of ex-kryptonite, I have a theory here. Obviously, we have Captain Luthor. You have General Sam Lane, who is obviously actively and openly looking at contingency plans for Superman. And then obviously you have Morgan Edge, who actually found this ex-kryptonite. All of these things could spell disaster for Smallville and for Superman, right? So I'm not going to call them a Legion of Doom, but with this revelation of ex-kryptonite, it would not shock or surprise me, obviously, that now that Morgan Edge has it, that Captain Luthor would be drawn to it as a power and a way to fight Superman. And also, I would not be surprised if somehow General Lane gets drawn to it as a way to enact his contingency plans against Superman. So, again, I'm not calling them a Legion of Doom, but it would not surprise me if this ex-Kryptonite draws them together and brings them together somehow. I know in the last feedback I sort of talked about how I think Jonathan is sort of in a lot of people's stories, but he doesn't necessarily have an arc of his own. And that led me to sort of think, particularly in this episode, we obviously know that Jordan has demonstrated and obviously has, I guess, a portion of Kryptonian powers that he's able to tap and access. What I really gathered from this episode is that Jonathan might not have a quote-unquote outward Kryptonian ability yet. I still think he'll get one. But this episode really showcased the other ability or superpower that Superman possesses, and that is his empathy and compassion. And Jonathan had that on full display in this episode, obviously trying to I guess touch base or at least connect with, I think the kid's name was Tag, the one with the broken arm. The way he tried to connect with him, the way he tried to help him, and then obviously when they were outside and Jonathan and Jordan both saw the distress that Tag was in, it was Jonathan who implored Jordan to go help him. That's significant compassion and empathy and heroism, and I think right now that's the significant ability that Jonathan has taken from Clark and from Superman. Like I said, I ultimately still believe he will gain some sort of physical power or ability, but right now I think his significant ability is compassion, and it was really nice to see that. I think, and I can't remember if it was Green Butterfly who had an email a couple of feedbacks ago, and I know some folks have talked about this, and that's obviously the sort of duality that Clark has as Superman. Obviously, we know what his responsibilities that he chooses to take on, and I think that's important because he chooses to do them. It's not because Sam Lane or some member of the government or whatever the case has asked him to do it, but these are responsibilities that he takes on himself. And then obviously we see what impact that has had on his relationship with Lois over the course of their courtship and marriage and what have you. And it's just sort of nice to see that duality and the complications that creates for them just on an everyday basis. I mean, I don't know that we've had on television a Superman that we sort of live with, and having that opportunity to do that here in this show lends itself to great possibilities, and I have good faith in the writers and producers and directors of the show that we'll get a good opportunity to see that play out even more. Like I said, I just really like the episode. I like the flow. I know it did not have a ton of action in it, but I did like the moment that Superman had with, I forget the guy's name who was in Metropolis, who was using the sonic beam against him, but the Superman clap or the Hulk clap that he used, I thought that was pretty cool and pretty effective, obviously. And I did like the moments that Lois had with Morgan Edge, the talk that they had in the mine shaft, and just sort of the back and forth, both of them getting under each other's skin. I like the way that they play off each other, and I think they make a dynamic hero sort of villain team. So it'll be nice to see how that plays out also. Like I said, the reveal at the end of the ex-Kryptonite, I hope it leads to like really good storytelling. What I don't necessarily want is it's sort of nice to have a quote unquote villain of the week or a freak of the week, that sort of deal. But if they start going down true season 1 Smallville territory where there is a freak of the week all the time, that would get old really fast. But I trust that this show won't tap that well too many times. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. I look forward to hearing other folks' feedback and taking in what you guys have to say. Talk to you later. Perry White out.
Awesome stuff there, Gary. He messaged me after he sent that, and he said, I said green butterfly, but I meant to say Dreamweaver. I was referring to an email, so yeah.
Yeah, a couple of us have been talking about it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's always got some good thoughts and things. I'm talking to him behind the scenes. I'm trying to snag him to come be a guest on Cybercast with me to talk about a TV show. So I'm working him over until he says yes.
It's fun, Carrie. Do it.
Yeah.
So, no, good thoughts as always.
Yeah.
Next up is an email from Dreamweaver, and I'll start it off. Harley, I got you halfway down here to take over.
Oh, okay, that's good because I didn't see my name at all. Okay.
So Dreamweaver says, "Hello, Flash, Harley, X-Force 11, and the rest of the super fam." I guess that's kind of what because I heard somebody else calling us super family.
Is that what Bitsy's poll ended up? What it ended up winning from her poll?
I don't remember what the results were, but that was one of them, was super fam. So that might be it.
That might be the one that won. Keep reading. I'll look.
All right. This episode gave us so many intriguing glimpses into more of the puzzle pieces behind the storyline for this season, and I'm interested to see where all of this goes. What was that Edge found at the very beginning? Was that a pod in the middle of a meteor shower? This resurrection he speaks of sounds pretty ominous. All the drumline music took me right back to high school, and apparently it brought General Lane back to high school too. That man just can't seem to leave his family alone for all of 5 minutes. He never came to any of Lois's games back in high school, but has time to show up for the boys' opening game in the pouring rain. He was just coming to stay the weekend anyway to try to keep an eye on Clark. And then he straight up told his grandkids not to waste their dad's time. This guy is such a jerk. The freaking military thinks they have a monopoly on everything, including people's lives. I think she has a point there that we were talking about.
Nope.
I understand you're one of mine. Ugh. Well, if that's not the creepiest way to start a conversation, I don't know what is. Edge seems to have some sort of angle towards Lana, and it feels very creepy right now. I forgot that he said that. I understand you're one of mine. That's like possessive. Holy.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, so creepy.
I think I was on high alert for her the whole episode because there was a moment when Lois and Lana were at the bar and there was a specific low angle shot of Lana raising her shot glass where I thought for a moment, something's in her drink, but then nothing happened. Yeah, can you imagine? All the teens turned it around for me this episode. I really liked all of them this week. Jordan is finding his place in Smallville and you can see his confidence growing. On the field, with the team, with Sarah, and with trying to unlock his powers, even if that didn't go so well. Jonathan continues to show his protective side, both with Jordan, but also with his friends and with Tag. You can see his resentment still bubbling underneath everything, but it seems he's really trying to keep a handle on it and be the mediator for everything, too. I like Jordan and Sarah's conversation at the party. It showed they are growing closer and getting more comfortable around each other, but there also are still secrets and insecurities between them. I liked how the lighting reflected this. She did. When it was straight on or when you could see both of them, their faces were lit well, but when it was the single shot showing the side of the face that the other couldn't see, their face was shadowed. Really subtle, but really neat. I knew it. There you go, X-Force. Also, a side note, I have a feeling Sarah and Lita, Mick's daughter over on Legends, would get along really well if they ever met. Both rebellious punk rock teenage daughters.
Yep. Yeah.
That would be fun. That would be cool if we got a visit like that. Yeah.
That would be so fun.
All right, Harley, you take the rest.
All right. Before I start, update Superfam 1. So our name is #Superfam.
Superfam. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. Continuing with her email. Yikes. Killgrave's sonic gun looked pretty nasty. Luckily, they got shut down quickly. I wonder, though, if the name drop of Intergang and Killgrave's appearance is going to be more than just a one-episode thing. I hope so. In the comics, Edge has been associated with Intergang, so I wonder if somehow all of this is connected and more than just a one-episode Easter egg nod. Oh. And if you thought Killgrave looked familiar, he was played by Brendan Fletcher, who played Parasite way back when in Smallville. Oh, wow.
Whoa.
But more recently played Stanley, the psycho killer inmate that befriended Oliver in jail in season 7 of Arrow.
There's the clarification. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
I
Good
truly, yeah, he is a great actor. I truly enjoy how they're handling Clark and Lois's relationship in this show. They have a very open relationship and actually communicate. Shocker. I added that part. Any turmoil between them is not from a lack of communication and keeping things from each other, but from normal reactionary human emotions. They have a lot of depth and history with each other, and that, plus the weight of each of their respective jobs and duties, shows through prominently in each scene they have together. And it was so sweet to see them get a date night in the barn, even if it was cut short.
Yep.
And right when you think Sam might be coming around a bit with that call telling Clark he can decide for himself if he's needed, he goes and forms a new contingency plan for Superman. Dun, dun, dun. And okay, so there's X-Kryptonite buried in the mines in Smallville, and it's giving people and or awakening metahuman abilities. Sounds a little bit like the Kryptonite meteors from Smallville, does it not?
Yeah.
Y'all. Apparently. I guess weird things are always happening in Smallville. Yes. Seems like Morgan Edge wants to build an army of metas from the X-Kryptonite by experimenting on people, and that's what he meant earlier when he said something about bringing out people's best selves. Oh, God, he's so creepy. Makes me all the more worried about Lana after seeing how much attention Edge was giving her. Me too.
Yep.
And lastly, a school for children with special abilities. Is it run by a guy named Professor Xavier? Apparently it's run by the DoD, so that's not a good sign. Government-run programs for people with powers are never trustworthy or ethical. James Bamford, a prolific Arrow alum, directed this episode, and he knows what he's doing. A little sad we didn't get any of his trademark big action sequences, but I really enjoyed it. But I still really enjoyed it. Giving this one 8.5 obscure kryptonite references out of 10. I just want to say this show's cinematography continues to be gorgeous and meaningful. I've also loved the color grading and color palette used throughout. They've used a green and yellow palette throughout a lot of the scenes, especially the ones with Superman fighting or ones with threats, which now makes sense because, surprise, surprise, the X-Kryptonite is green and yellow. So I'm loving those thematic nods. That's all my thoughts for now. Until next time, your friend Dreamweaver.
Cool. I love when she pulls little things out like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good
Things
stuff
that go way over my head but are super cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And there, X-Force, you get to read Dad L for our last.
Yes. Dad L says, "Hello, superfans. My feedback is going to sound like a broken record. I love this show. My rating is 9.25 romantic barn dates.
Ooh.
I know I'm biased in my opinion, so I will keep it short. In many ways, Clark having a family is a vulnerability. If one of his enemies learned of them, the consequences would be devastating. But from another perspective, his family also gives him strength. That's how he was able to overcome the sonic blaster with a thunderclap. He heard his sons. Also, at the end, when he had to leave his barn day with Lois, it's coming back to her that gives him strength. He fights for his own family, to make the world a safer place for them. He wants to make sure those in trouble around the world make it home safe to their families. General Lane disagrees. He rightly sees Superman as a supreme hero for good. However, at his core, Superman is a man. Take away the man and you take away the Superman. The general may have to learn that the hard way. Dad L, the last father of Krypton. Love it. Great thoughts there. And I love the fact that you bring out talking about the man and the Superman. That is such a great point. Such a great point.
It is. Because really, I mean, if he was on his own planet, he would just be regular, right? Without any powers. So he is still just a man at the center of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Good thoughts.
Stuff.
Awesome feedback, everybody. Thanks as always. The rest of you out there, join the show, join us, and become part of this thing, just like Rick did at the very beginning, being a new feedbacker, but an old-time listener. So get on board. This is how you do that.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to tomorrowslegends@gmail.com. That's spelled with one R. You can also reach us on Twitter at tomorrowslegends, also with one R. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/tomorrowslegends and become part of the community.
Alrighty, guys, that brings us to the end of the show. We got one more episode left before the dang 7-week hiatus, and that is going to be episode 5 called The Best of Smallville.
Ooh. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, 7 weeks off after that. Dang.
Yeah, so just a reminder on the date. Next week, March 23rd, 2021 is episode 5, and then we're off until May 18th. So
that's right.
But what comes back while we're waiting for Superman?
Yes, Legends returns on May 2nd.
Yay!
That means we'll all be back to talk about some Legends, so that'll be a switch.
That'll
Down
be a
to
big
earth
switch.
Family drama to crazy alien invaded time travel.
And zero budget.
Yeah, we'll have to see, exactly. And then just to throw that on top of that, other Star Wars fans out there, the Bad Batch begins May 6th, and my Mandalore podcast will be covering that. So there you go. Awesome, guys. Well, that was an awesome show, awesome feedback, and great discussion. We'll talk to you guys next week. Everybody have a good weekend. This is The Flash, signing off.
This is Harley Quinn. I'm out.
This is X-Force 11. So say we all.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast Network.